friends, welcome back to Daily Sews and Stuff. My name is Brandon Daly, and today I'm talking about Ditto Pattern projectors. So if you haven't heard, Ditto Pattern projectors is a joint collaboration between singer Joann and Ditto Patterns, and they just launched at Fashion Week this last week they did this launch party thing in New York City and are doing a lot of showing of how their stuff works, and you can pre-order it now, but you can't actually have it in your hands until March. If you pre-order it now, it'll be the beginning of March, and if not, it'll be the end of March. And if you don't know anything about me, my channel focuses on sewing stuff, but really, rather unintentionally, I have focused it on projector sewing. So back in 2020, early 2020, I discovered the Facebook group Projectors for Sewing. Missy Poore founded it. I've got an interview with her if you want to read about or listen about that. And it has now grown to 60,000 members. That's been 3 years that I have been projector sewing, and about 2.5 that I've been making videos. Because at the time that I started projector sewing, that Facebook group was the only resource out there. And now there are lots of people making videos about it, and pattern companies that are talking about it, and other resources that you can find, but that Facebook group is still the best place to hear about projectors for sewing. And I continue to talk about projectors because it has definitely become a passion of mine, and I like sharing the things that I have learned with others so that you guys can do it too. So that's where this is coming from. I want to make it extremely clear that I am in no way associated with Ditto, Joann's, or Singer, other than the fact that I often shop at Joann's. And I want to make it really clear that I did email them about testing it for them, but I never heard it back from them. So I have never seen this in person or actually gotten the opportunity to play around with it. I certainly did not go from Texas to New York City for Fashion Week. That was never a part of my plans. So I am going off of the things that I have read online. Now, it kind of falls into 3 different categories. There are the things that I know, that I have read from Ditto Patterns themselves, that I have watched their YouTube video, that I have read, things they've put out, that sort of thing. And then there are things that are kind of hearsay because they're just things that people are saying who went to the launch. And then there's things that this is me taking these other things, putting them together, and making my best educated guess, also bringing in the knowledge of this is how pattern projecting works. And I also want to say, just for posterity's sake, this video I am recording with one knee on a little knee scooter, which is why I keep my hand on the brake over here, and I'm not quite as expressive with both hands as usual, because I did injure my foot about a month ago now. So for posterity's sake, I think that should be included in this video and explain why my arm is like this for a big portion of the video. Let's jump in. Here's the stuff we know, right? We know from their advertisements and where you can go on Joann's website and purchase it or pre-order it, etc., that it costs $800. $800 US dollars. I think it's actually $7.99 to purchase this system. And it is very much a system because it comes with, and I'm going to read this off of my screen. It comes with the projector, the mount, a 24 by 36 inch mat, a rotary cutter, weights, pattern target stickers, which have not yet been explained to me, at least, what those are for, a cord, and cord covers. So it definitely is coming with kind of an all-in-one packaging. It's a joint venture from Singer and Joanns and Ditto. It is sold through Singer authorized dealers and through Joann's. We already talked about how it's not available until March, but the pre-orders are open. They have claimed in many, many places that it is the first innovation in patterning in 160 years. They're claiming that for 2 reasons. The first reason is for the projector itself, and the second reason is for the customization you can do within their system of patterns. And Ditto has said in several places, in several replies to people's comments on Instagram and Facebook, that it is only the Ditto brand patterns that you can do the customizations on. kind of looping into that, there are other pattern companies that have kind of partnered with them. Those are, I'm just not sure if I'm saying this right, Lysol and Company, Madeline, Style Arc, Straight Stitch Society, and Named. And then it also seems like the big four are, maybe some of the big four are in there with them, which McCall's, Simplicity, Butterick, and the other one that I can't think of right now. I looked on the website and the prices seem to range from about $7 to about $17, which is fairly typical for a PDF pattern. It's a little bit high at the $17. $12 is usually the most that I pay for things, but you know, different things come with different price points. You can also do a $10 per month subscription. I think it's $9.99. And it sounds like there might also be some different options for different subscriptions to have access to all of the patterns. And the subscription means that you will lose access to all of the patterns once you're no longer subscribing. But if you purchase the pattern, you continue to have access even if you end a subscription. When asked if you can project your own patterns on Instagram, I'm going to read their answer. Great question. At launch, Ditto projects the patterns available on dittopatterns.com. Ditto will continue to evolve, and input like this is how we will add new capabilities in the future, like design uploads. So it does sound like they are willing to listen to some feedback. Now, whether or not that gets implemented is a whole other question, but that's true of any new thing that comes out. From what I can tell, watching the calibration video for them, it seems to be a fairly simple operation, but it will only work with their mat. And as I said earlier, their mat comes in 24 by 36. We do not know yet if you'll be able to purchase that individually, if they will have other sizes available. And in the videos, it looks like you can place the pieces anywhere you want on your fabric by manipulating them in the app. And you just drag with your finger, which is very convenient. It will mirror vertically or horizontally. But I don't know that if you can turn it. I think you can. It just snaps to different things as you turn it like this. From what I was seeing in a video, I don't really have any confirmation of that. As I said, they're claiming that the patterns are the first customizable patterns. We'll come back to that also. But you still have to choose a size for purchasing, which I don't really understand. But they do have their size chart on there, and it goes from 0, which I'm going to go with a waist circumference is 26. The bust circumference is 32.5 to 28, where the waist circumference is 53 and the bust circumference is 55. And there are 17 different points here that you measure against their size charts. Now, moving into a little bit more uncharted territory, where this is not stuff I have directly read from Ditto, but is stuff that I'm kind of putting together into educated guesses. It's proprietary software, and it is a proprietary pattern format, and we're not going to be able to buy their patterns and use them to project the way we're doing it. And the projector cannot be used for anything other than projecting their patterns. So you can't take your Ditto projector to your living room and project a movie on the wall. You can only use it to project your pattern on your fabric. It won't do anything else. It only communicates through the app and has some sort of proprietary software to make that work. And not being able to upload your own pattern, to me, says you're not going to be able to upload a pattern from another designer either. You can only do it through their website, which is basically what they said. So that's really limiting on which patterns are available to use. Although I will say there is a fairly extensive collection already there for you to look through. And if you don't already have a pattern collection, I can see how that would certainly be enough there to get you started. Further educated guesses. So far as I know, in asking a few people directly that I would consider experts in the projectors for sewing world, people who have been doing this for a while, who really know what they're talking about, weren't consulted in making this. And one of them guessed that that's because we're not really their target audience if we're already projecting, which is a really good point. I feel like that's kind of a double-edged sword. I feel like talking to somebody who really knows what they're doing and has been doing this for a while and getting their input, as well as people who've never done this before, might have maybe come to some different conclusions in the end, because I think there's a lot of assumptions people who've never done projecting before have that aren't necessarily true once you actually do it. I'll get back to that a little bit more when I talk about my opinions. Next educated guess here. There are 17 measurements on that size chart, and the hearsay is that they talked about there being 17 customization points. And so my brain says if there are 17 parts of that size chart and there are 17 customization points, those are going to match up. So I will link to that, to their size chart in the description box, but I also will just kind of read right now what those points are. They are height, neck circumference, bust circumference, under bust circumference, waist circumference, hips, thigh, knee, upper arm, and wrist, all circumferences. Shoulder width, bust height, front length, back width, belly protuberance, and buttocks. And where it says belly protuberance, it has letters like A, B, C, D, which I assume you'll be able to change to different options, like with bootstrap patterns maybe. When you do like the bootstrap, make your own body double, what am I trying to say? Dress form. And then buttocks, it all says average across those. So I'm guessing that you'll say if you have a big booty or not there. I don't know. They do have back width and shoulder width. So maybe that's how they encompass this. But to me, having a bust circumference but not having an upper bust circumference means they're not going to do an FBA for me. So like I said, maybe they found a different way around that. This is just me spitballing here. But that, as a sewist, concerns me. A sewist who often has to do an FBA concerns me. And it has height, and then it has bust height, front length, and back length. And I would assume that if you're doing a bottom half pattern, maybe they might have inseam instead of the front. I don't know how they might do that. But again, as somebody who's very, very short and is often changing the height of patterns for myself, I find that I kind of have to take height out of a couple of different places to get it short enough for my torso correctly, to get it short enough for my legs correctly. And I find it a little bit concerning that if I were to do that, I wouldn't get it as customized as I actually would want. I don't know. Like I said, I tried to buy a pattern just to see how it all worked, and you cannot do that until it's launched. So not even like, you can't even buy it for and I don't know if you can buy them and use them with other software, if you can buy them and print them, buy them and use your own projector. I feel like probably not, but again, I just don't know. So in watching the video that they have put out that shows people using their software, and that's like Ditto's YouTube channel itself, it looks like you cannot place a piece across multiple screens unless they've pre-sliced it. And so what I mean by that is I will sit down with Affinity Designer and I will pattern Tetris something, and I will get it laid out exactly how I want to cut it, and then I'll project it onto my screen. And it doesn't always fit on my mat entirely. There will be stuff that hangs off the edge, and I'll have to shift my fabric and shift my screen to match it back up and continue cutting. Now, the fact that they don't let you do that, I think is kind of a could go either way thing. Like, it could be really cool that they've pre-sliced these things for you and you can figure out exactly how to make it all work in the end. That might end up being easier than what we're doing, but you won't be able to be quite as efficient with your fabric because they're not going to let you lay it out exactly how you want. And one of the reasons I like laying it out exactly how I want through Affinity is that I can also take like the pattern of my fabric into account. And you know, if I'm wanting to stripe match, I can do that. And I think it'll be a little bit harder with this. But I don't know. I haven't played with it. That information about the pre-slicing and all of that, that also comes from a FCC document that I will link in the description box. So we're moving on to my section called Hearsay. So this is from watching the stories, watching the reels, reading the comments of people who were at the launch, but that don't have any association with Ditto as far as I can tell, and that haven't actually really played with it. They just sort of saw it demonstrated. So it's all cloud-based, which means you won't actually have any pattern through them. Like you won't have it downloaded to have on your computer to use without internet later, that you won't have them, you know, if things don't go well for Ditto and they shut down, you won't have that pattern later. I don't know. I have no idea if any of that is true. I want to be very clear that that is me hearing what somebody said that may or may not be true and extrapolating from that. But to me, that's a little bit concerning because I was there whenever Craftsy was bought out by Blueprint and then bought back out by Craftsy. And, you know, if you had the subscription and you had also bought some classes, there was kind of some hiccups there where you didn't always get to keep your bought classes forever. You know, Craftsy was like, you'll keep them forever, but that actually is only forever as long as Craftsy is a thing. Now they do have the DVDs for sale now that you can actually own, but I feel like that's an important point that, I mean, I hope Craftsy doesn't go out of business, and I don't wish for Ditto to go out of business, but if they do and you've wrapped up all your stuff with them, where does that leave you? That's something that concerns me. And then also something that is hearsay and kind of taken from stuff people have said, and then also watching the videos a little bit. You can place the pattern pieces where you want to, which is really cool. And they have mirroring built in and rotation, it seems like, which is really cool. But you can't unfold pieces, so you must cut on the fold. And honestly, I don't see that as a huge drawback unless I'm trying to do some pattern matching or fussy cutting. But for a lot of people, that is a huge drawback. For a lot of people, one of the reasons they love projector sewing is getting that pattern all in one piece. Something that I have read over and over and over again from others commenting on Ditto's stuff or about Ditto is that it looks really nice in the space. They feel like it looks good. And I feel like, honestly, Ditto is a really high-end option. I mean, at $800, it kind of has to be high-end because that's a high-end kind of price tag. So it makes sense that it has that high-end look. And if that's something that is truly important to you, then that might be a really good pro for Ditto. People also are saying that it looks really simple and easy to use, and that is something that people often don't think about projector sewing when they first hear about it. So that is another thing that, you know, people are talking about, and it's true. It does look very simple and easy to use. I'll come back to that a little bit more later, but I think overall it will be fairly simple. I mean, projecting is fairly simple in my opinion, but people are really, really hating how proprietary it seems like it's going to be. People are comparing it to Cricut, especially when Cricut first started out, how it was very proprietary and, you know, you could only use those little Cricut cartridges. But Cricut has come a long way and a lot of things have changed. So that comparison can also mean that perhaps Ditto will change things in the future and that it may not always be quite so proprietary. Again, don't know that. And then people are very much commenting on how expensive it is. And I find that really disappointing because if this is the first somebody is hearing about pattern projecting and their first experience with it is it's going to be $800, I feel like that's going to turn them off and they're not going to look for these other solutions that are a lot more budget friendly that we have. Because generally when you mention projector sewing in a Facebook group or something, people's immediate response is, oh, I could never afford that. For some people, that's probably true. But for most people, that's not true. It doesn't have to be expensive. We can do it for less than half the cost of Ditto, which again, we're coming back to that. So I want to give my opinions and then I'm going to kind of summarize it all in a pro-con list. Watching Ditto's calibration video looks really, really simple. And what I heard from people who had seen it in action was that it was really, really simple. Basically, you lay down their mat, their proprietary mat, you set up your mount and your projector, and then you take a picture through their app of the projected image and it auto-calibrates it for you. Now, that is super, super simple if it works exactly as advertised. And I don't mean that I think that they're lying. What I mean is I know from having calibrated a lot of projectors that the number one thing you can do to have an easy calibration is to have a fully flat and level surface. So what happens if you're using a folding table and you don't have a fully level surface, you don't have a fully flat surface, how is that going to calibrate? And what's going to, is it going to let you do any fine tuning yourself, or are you just going to have to accept that it says can't calibrate and then you can't use it at all? I don't know. These are questions that I have, which, again, I have not played with this. So there might have been something that they have figured out that makes that work. I would love to know it, but I don't. But that is certainly a concern that I have. If calibration does not go super smoothly, then what? Joann's generally does not let you return opened boxes on things like Cricuts or sewing machines or irons. So I kind of feel like they're not going to let you open a return, or let you return an opened box of Ditto. And then are you just out $800? Which honestly, that applies to a lot of different things. What if you just don't like it and it's not for you? I don't know. I don't know about that. Again, that is me making some big assumptions that may or may not be true. I also worry that if you have to have their proprietary mat in order to calibrate it, what happens, like when I had an iron sitting on my mat and my 4-year-old decided to helpfully plug it in for me, and it messed up my mats and I had to buy new mats. Are there mats? Will they sell mats for sale separately? You know, how much will they be? Are you always going to be locked into the 24x36 size, which, given the vast majority of people projector sewing are using a 24x36 mat. So I do not think that is too small of a mat. But there's also quite a lot of us that are using much bigger mats now. I mean, I've upgraded mine to a bigger size and I love it. So will you be able to upgrade to a bigger size in the future? I don't know. I don't like that they are saying that they have invented the customization of patterns, because, I mean, I've been using Apostrophe Patterns for a little while now. I've probably talked about them before. I'll link them in the description box. They have really cool system where you enter your measurements and it spits out a pattern that fits you. They are generally, and you can use those over and over. I know for certain you can use those over and over again. I can enter my measurements, and I can enter my youngest daughter's measurements, and I can enter my dad's measurements, and those are all wildly different sizes. But each time it'll just give me a pattern that fits them after having bought that one pattern. I don't know if you'll be able to do that with theirs. It sounds like you will only be able to do it for one sized person. Now, again, that is a lot of hearsay that may not be true. But there hasn't been any clarification on that either. In the setup video, one of the setup videos, they show cutting with scissors, but they very conveniently show cutting with scissors along one straight line that is going away from the cutting person. And then when they get to a curve, they switch to showing you how to cut with a rotary cutter. I think, from, again, having used projectors for a while now, you're not going to be able to cut with scissors. That's not realistic. You're going to need a rotary cutter or to trace and cut with scissors. And I think that's fine. Like, it doesn't bother me if you want to trace and cut with scissors or if you want a rotary cut. But it seems misleading to say you can cut with scissors when I know that when you got to that armhole curve, you are not going to be able to do that with scissors. I think it's fairly obvious by now that I am not their target audience, and that's okay. And if you are their target audience, I am not meaning to demean you in any sort of way. I think that this can be a really great high-end solution for people who are willing to spend the high-end money and who want the high-end look and who want everything to have been figured out for them and to just plug and play. But I also think that the DIY and budget-conscious way is how a lot of people who are in the sewing world operates. I mean, we're the kind of people that go to a craft fair and think, oh, I could make that myself. Now, sometimes you buy it anyways because it's super cute or it's a great idea or the convenience of somebody else having made it for you. So again, that goes back to maybe then you're their target audience if that convenience matters more to you than the flexibility. But for me, having the flexibility to get the specific kind of projector that is going to work best in my space, to use any pattern I want to project, to be able to take my projector to go give a presentation on child development somewhere, and just use the projector I already own. To take the projector to the living room for movie night one night and project it on the wall and, make it a big fun thing for the kids, or for that matter, outside. Actually, we have a big white wall outside that this summer, would that be a really fun idea? Things just occurred to me now. But there's a customization and a flexibility with having a DIY option that I think a lot of us appreciate. A lot of us appreciate the ingenuity that goes into making this work for you and making it custom for you. Ditto talks a lot about customizing the pattern, but for me, it's just as important to customize my setup. I'm also concerned that if only the Ditto patterns can be customized, and if you're not actually getting a PDF of your pattern that you can then adjust in a different software, how are you going to adjust the patterns that they're selling that are not Ditto brand patterns to fit you? Are you just hoping that you fit in one size? And to be fair, there's probably people out there. I mean, obviously, there has to be people out there that fit in one size. Otherwise, that wouldn't be that size. But as somebody who is not one of those people who fits in that one size, that really concerns me, because I will want to, how would I do that? How would I grade between sizes? How, if you're only letting me put one piece on a time, how will I adjust for height if you're not, you know what I mean? Yeah, I hope I'm making sense here. That I find concerning, because I often have to do so many different adjustments to my patterns. I also think that they're saying in 160 years, nothing has changed in the pattern world. That kind of irks me. And I get that they are a company trying to sell a product and they're going to advertise in ways that are hyperbolic and things like that. But if they're talking about the pattern customization, I've been using apostrophe for a while and it does that. I've known about bootstrap patterns for a while and they do that. If they're talking about the projecting of the pattern, I've been doing it for 3. I know there are people who have been doing it longer. So maybe from a industry standpoint, they maybe have a point. But I don't feel like it's very revolutionary. And I think that Missy Poor, who actually started this revolution, should get more credit for the fact that she really did start this revolution. I also felt kind of insulted reading some of the articles written about it. Because, and this may be coming more from the journalists than from Ditto themselves, but I felt like it took away from all of the work that's been done before this. I feel like the collaboration of lots and lots of sewists, there's 60,000 people in the Projectors for Sewing group. And the innovation of people who looked at what we were doing and said, I can write a program to solve that problem for you. The people like my husband who looked at that and said, I can build a mount that will solve that problem for you. The people like Basic Niche who saw, I can make a mount that will work great for that. Them saying that they have innovated this, that it's revolutionary technology, is taking away from all of this work that all of these people have put in. And I don't even consider myself one of those people, because I try to bring those innovations to my audience, but I don't feel like I've actually done any of the innovations. So I don't even feel personally offended by it. But it makes me mad for my friends, because I feel like they deserve credit for the hard work that they've done. I feel like the people behind Ditto Projectors thought projector sewing was a great idea, and they perceived the problems to be having to come up with a solution for yourself. They perceived the problems to be calibration is impossible. They perceived the problems to be if you are projecting it, you can't customize it. And then they came up with a solution for each of those things, which is very much true. They have got a very good looking high-end option for the mount and projector. And they have a little cord cover that keeps it all nice and neat. It's all nice and branded together, and it's gonna look nice in your sewing room. And you don't have to go out and figure out what works for you. You just take their solution and you implement it. And I think for some people, that's what they need. They don't feel like they have the time to do the research. They don't feel like they have the time to come up with the solution. So having something that is just done for them is what they need. And I can certainly understand that. If calibration truly works every single time, like it is shown, then they have figured out a very easy way to calibrate. I also don't think calibration is all that difficult. I think that for some people definitely have problems, and I don't want to minimize that, but I think that it is something that people fear more than actually is a problem, and I'll come back to that a little bit more. But I think, honestly, whether you're using Ditto or any other projector, it's going to come down to whether or not your surface is flat. The way they have integrated your pattern customization into this software altogether, I think is a really good way to solve the problem of making a pattern fit you and cutting it out you-sized rather than a standard size. But I also feel like we can solve all of those problems without spending $800. I think that if you need something just laid out for you, using a tried and true setup from Projectors for Sewing, which some of them even include using a tension rod just like Ditto does. And here is exactly why I had so much trouble moving this video from my phone to my computer. Apparently, it corrupted. And you are missing the end of what I feel like was kind of the meat of my video. So I am going to show this to you in a re-recorded manner. My craft room is not pretty right now, and I do not have makeup on, and I'm wearing clothes that are just a hoodie and sweatpants. But I'm going to finish this video because I think, unfortunately, the part that cut off was the most important part. We can solve all of these perceived problems, which may not even be perceived problems. There's actual merit to some of them, without using Ditto. Using a tried and true setup from Projectors for Sewing, and some of those tried and true setups use tension rods just as Ditto does, will give you a quicker result than going off on your own and trying to buy a projector that you hope works. You can also use a ultra short throw, which is what you can see there, as a solution that will not be permanently mounted. There's lots of different ways you can go about this, and while that might make it more intimidating to begin, it also means you get what you want. With a DIY setup, calibration is feared by so many people. I've just started calling it the calibration dread because everybody seems to have it when they first start, and I speaking for myself as well. But it's not as bad as most people think it's going to be. And if you start with the key of having a flat surface and you are able to get your projector parallel to that flat surface, it's going to be pretty simple to calibrate. And there's a couple of different ways you can get there, just like all the rest of this with the DIY setup. But a flat surface and a projector that is pointing, levelly down on your flat surface is going to make calibration not take you that much longer than taking the picture does. And once you've done it, you don't have to do it again unless you move your projector. And if you will be moving your projector, you'll get lots of practice in and you'll be able to do it a whole lot quicker. And if you do something like this mount, that makes it where you just move it and set it back, and you don't have to do a lot of adjusting again as long as you're putting it right back where it was. You can also get apostrophe patterns that will have you a customized pattern for you. I also just learned about, and it's cool that it gets to make it to this video now, freepatterns.com, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I'll make sure it's in the description box. But it's another website where, and this one is completely free, where you enter your measurements and they spit out a pattern that fits you, which is so amazing. And then you can do things like buy vector software for $40 or use the free vector software and do your own adjustments just like you would have done on paper, but digitally. And there's lots of videos about that on my channel and other people's channels if that's the direction you want to go. If you don't want to get that tech savvy, then you can do like apostrophe or this other thing, or you can just kind of do it the way you've been doing it. There's many, many options here is my point. And again, I think that's what overwhelms people is the amount of options that come with projector sewing in the DIY way. That was hard to say. Now I'm just rhyming. Um, but but those are the things that make it great as well. Being able to choose exactly what works for you makes it such an amazing option. So let's talk cost breakdowns. Ditto costs $800. It is all inclusive. You get everything you need to set up your projector for that $800. And like I said, it's a very high-end look, a very high-end price tag. And then you have to, on top of that, pay for your patterns / a subscription for patterns. The DIY way depends on setup. You can spend as little as $100, maybe not even quite that much, and on up. I mean, people have spent probably pretty close to that $800, but for most people, it ends up in the $100 to $200 range in the U.S. If you're outside the U.S., it usually ends up a little bit more expensive. And I would even say, $300 isn't a crazy number for that. But that assumes that you already have a mat, a rotary cutter, and a pattern library, which I think is true for most people looking into projector sewing. But if it's not, and you're going to buy a mat and a rotary cutter, you're still going to be at less than half the cost of Ditto. And either way, you're going to be buying patterns. So summing this all up, pros for Ditto is that it is an all-in-one solution. It is taking projectors mainstream, which I do like. And I think that we're certainly talking about it more because of that, and I appreciate that. And it's easier for mobile users. I don't think I've really touched on this much, but while there are ways to use your iPad or your phone or your other tablet to connect to a traditional projector and do all the things that we do, and it does look a lot more simple on the Ditto program to do this. Here's the 3 cons though. Expense. Oh my word. Like, I feel like I have sticker shock at that $800, and I think a lot of people reacted that way. And unfortunately, I think that's going to make other people think that projector sewing is so expensive when it doesn't have to be. Proprietary. So many people are very, very upset that it is a subscription base and that it is so proprietary and they can't use the pattern libraries they already have. And limited, which really goes back to that they can't use the pattern libraries they already have. You won't be able to take it to go watch a movie in your living room. You can only use it for that one job. I like a good dedicated thing. I will use thread snips that will only snip threads because they do that one job super, super well. This is my favorite sewing machine. It is a straight stitch sewing machine and it does that one job very, very well. So if something does a job and does it very, very well, I think it's okay for it to be dedicated to that one job. And many people who set up their projector for sewing refuse to ever move it to do anything else with. So maybe that is not really multi-use, but it can be, which is going to lead me into the pros and cons of the DIY projector setup. It is infinitely more customizable. You can customize it to your budget. You can customize it to which patterns you choose to use. You can customize it by choosing your own mat size. You can customize it by hacking and mashing patterns from different pattern companies, from whatever it is that you want to do. You are not limited in any way. What shows up on your mat is going to be a duplicate or an extension of what shows up on your computer. It can be anything you want it to be. And you're going to be able to customize it to work in your space. So, I kind of said it already, but it lets you use your own pattern library. It allows you to design patterns for yourself. And I think, especially with Ditto being so limited to their pattern library, that's important as a separate note here, because it's also a cost savings, because you don't have to pay for your patterns again. And then it lets you use the projector for anything you like, even if you buy a projector and you decide, I don't like pattern projecting. Cool. Use that projector to do something else, like I mentioned earlier. Or sell that projector, because other people will want to use it for something else. But finding a buyer for your Ditto at the price that is similar to what you paid for it, I think will be a little bit more difficult. Or, I mean, honestly, just if you need it for another purpose too. And I do really fun things. Like, I have used it to trace the outline of a unicorn to make pin the tail on the unicorn for a birthday party. I've used it to project a coloring page down and let my kids color on that. You can do all sorts of fun things with it, and you're not limited to only that one job. So I think it's fairly clear in the end, while there are some reasons that people will want a Ditto pattern projector, I don't think it is the best solution for most people. I think going the DIY route will be more cost effective and more customized to your needs than buying this all-in-one solution. Okay, back to the other Branolin. I think we can all agree that if I buy something for my channel this year, it needs to be a new webcam that is in 1080p. Just say it. All right, friends, I'm going to wrap up this video here. If you are just now hearing about projector sewing and you've never tried it before, I want to make sure you know about all your options before you make any purchases. And you can go to Projectors for Sewing Facebook group. You can go to dailysewsandstuff.com. I'll put links in the description box. Check out, find out all of your options before you make any purchases. If you are talking about Ditto with your friends and you want to hear, you want to share my point of view, please do share this video. If you want to tell me in the comments, your experience with Ditto or your experience with projector sewing or what you think the pros and cons might be, please leave those in the comments. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!
Keep watching my videos, subscribe and comment.